Welcome to MAT 2LB, booklet number 1, Rounding and Converting, lesson number 3, Place Value. So far, when we've been rounding to different place values, we've been rounding to place values commonly used with money. So that would be something like cents, which we call hundredths, which is 2 place values to the right of the decimal, or dollars, which is ones, and that's 1 place value to the left of the decimal. But there's lots of different place values, and if we have a look at this graphic, you'll see, and I'll just highlight this, you'll see that it outlines where all the place values are between hundredths and millions. So there's lots of different place values that we could be rounding to. We're going to round to some different ones in the lesson today. So let's start with example number 1. Example number 1 says, round the following numbers to the nearest hundred. So if we go over to our graphic, let's find hundreds. There's hundreds right there. So hundreds, if you'll count over, that's 1, 2, 3 spots to the left of the decimal. That's where we find hundreds. So using that, let's do some rounding. A says round 1,205 decimal 1 to the nearest hundred. So let's find the hundreds place value. 1, 2, 3 to the left of the decimal. So there it is with a 2 in this example. We look to the digit after it, which is a 0, to tell us how to go about rounding this particular example. And the 0 tells us that we are going to keep that 2 the same. So we write down the numbers up till that 2, and everything after it becomes a 0. Now you'll notice that I didn't bother to write down anything after the decimal sign, and that's because those zeros did not help me maintain my place value, like those 2 zeros did after the 2. If I hadn't written those 2 zeros, I would have ended up with a 12. But I had to make sure that we maintained our place value at hundreds, so we had 1,200 as our answer. That's a rule that we're going to be applying when we're doing any type of rounding. Let's have a look at example B. Rounding to the nearest hundred, 3,780.99. First things first, let's find the place value we're rounding to. That's hundreds. 1, 2, 3 spots to the left. It's going to be a 7. Let's look to the number after it, in this case an 8, to tell us how to round the 7. In this case, the 8 tells us to round the 7 up to an 8. So that will be 3,800. And you'll notice again, no decimal, nothing after that. At this point, I'd like you to pause the video and try example C on your own. When you've got it, come on back and we'll see how you did. Alright, you're back. Let's have a look at this example. 9,450.42. We are going to find the place value we want to round to. In this case, 1, 2, 3 spots to the left of the decimal, it's a 4. We are going to look to the digit after it, which is a 5, to tell us how to round that 4. 5 tells us that we are going to round that 4 up to a 5. So we have 9,500. That is rounded to the nearest hundred. So now we've tackled hundreds. Let's try example 2, which has us round the following numbers to the nearest tenth. So let's go have a look again at our graphic. We're looking for tenths this time. So tenths right here, you'll notice that that is 1 place value to the right of the decimal. So I've already got that written down there, 1 place to the right of the decimal. Now let's work one of these examples together. We are going to round 45.67 to the nearest tenth. First things first, I want to find the place value I want to round to. So there's tenths, 1 to the right of the decimal place. Now I look to the digit after it, which in this case is a 7, to tell us how to round the 6. In this example, 7 tells us to round that 6 up to a 7, so we have 45.7. And you'll notice that I don't bother to write anything after that 7. I don't write a 0 or anything like that because it doesn't help to maintain its place value. We end at tenths, that's where we stop. Let's have a look at example B. Example B, 553.12 rounded to the nearest tenth. So let's find the tenth place value. There it is, 1 spot to the right of the decimal. I look to the digit after it, which is a 2 in this case, to tell us how to round the 1. And that 2 tells us to keep the 1 the same. We're going to round it down, or keep it the same rather, as a 1. So that's going to be 553.1. And that's where we stop. At this point, I'd like you to pause the video and I'd like you to try 0.75 on your own. Give it a try. When you got it, come on back and we'll see how you did. Alright, you're back. Let's have a look. First things first, we want to find the tenths place value. It's 1 to the right of the decimal, and there it is. That's a 7 in this example. We look to the digit after it, which in this case is a 5, to tell us how to round that 7. And 5 tells us to round that 7 up to an 8. So 0.8 is how we round that example to the nearest tenth. Moving on to example 3, we are now going to round the following numbers to the nearest 10. So let's grab our highlighter, let's head up to that graphic again and have a look. We're looking for the nearest 10. So there's 10s right there. You'll notice that it is 1, 2 place values to the left of our decimal. Let's see if we can use that. 2 places to the left of the decimal. We're looking to round 984.25 to the nearest 10. Starts by finding the decimal or the place value we want to round to. In this case, 1, 2 is going to be an 8. We look to the digit after it, which is a 4, to tell us how to round the 8. And 4 tells us to keep the 8 the same. We're not going to round it up, we're going to keep it the same, so that will be 980. And again, you'll notice I'm not writing the decimal, I'm not writing anything down after that. Everything after the place value I'm rounding to, it's either a 0 if it's to the left of the decimal or nothing at all if it comes after the decimal. So 980 is how we round that to the nearest 10. Let's have a look at the next example. We have 66 rather, decimal 93. We want to round this to the nearest 10. Let's start by finding the place value we want to round to. In this case, it's 1, 2 to the left of the decimal, which is that 6 to the left. We look to the digit after it, which is also a 6, to tell us how to round the first 6. In this example, the second 6 tells us to round that first 6 up to a 7. So we are going to have 7t. And again, we're not going to write anything down after the decimal place. We're going to keep this at 70. All right, last example. I'd like you to hit pause here and try it on your own. It's 1,455.78 rounded to the nearest 10. When you got it, come on back and we'll see how you did. Okay, you're back. We are rounding to the nearest 10. So I'm going to find the 10 place value, 1, 2 to the left of the decimal, and there it is. We look to the digit after it, which happens to also be a 5, to tell us how to round that. That 5 tells us to round up the first 5 to a 6. So we have 1,460. And again, nothing after it. No decimal, no additional zeros. And that's how we round to the nearest 10. Last examples, or last set of examples, example 4, round to the nearest hundredth. Now, we've done hundredths before. That's cents if we're talking about money, but I'll highlight it anyway. Hundredths, right there, that's 2 decimal places to the right, or 2 place values to the right of the decimal. So let's start in this example, rounding these numbers to the nearest hundredths. So here we are, 0.159. We start by finding the place value we want to round to, which is hundredths. There it is, 1, 2 to the right of the decimal. We look to the number after it, which is a 9, to tell us how to round the 5. In this case, a 9 tells us to round the 5 up to a 6, so our answer will be 0.16 is how we round that to the nearest hundredth. Let's have a look at the next example. 3.034. Again, as always, let's start by finding the place value we want to round to. Hundredths, that's 1, 2 to the right of the decimal. We look to the digit after it, which is a 4, to tell us how to round that 3. 4 tells us to keep the 3 the same. So we have 3.03 rounded to the nearest hundredth. What I'd like you to do here is hit pause and try example C on your own. Come on back when you're done and we'll see how you did. All right, you're back. Let's have a look at this. We have 14.689. We're going to round to the nearest hundredths. Hundredth is right there. That's 2 to the right of the decimal. We look to the digit after it to tell us how to round. That 9 tells us that we will be rounding that 8 up to also a 9. So we have 14.69 rounded to the nearest hundredth. So that's the end of lesson 3. Again, use this graphic here to help you stay clear on which place values are where. And after this, you head off to the worksheet, and I'll see you in lesson number 4.